Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the City of Bettendorf. Today is our Committee of the Whole meeting. It's Monday, February 14th, 2022. Happy Valentine's Day to you all. I'm glad that we're all spending it together instead of with a Valentine. No, we can do that later. We've got a lot of good things on the operational agenda to go through tonight. Our first two items are for our development director, economic development director, Jeff Ryder, and I see that our finance director, Jason Schatt, has joined him. Items 6 and 7, 8 and 9, and 10 and 11 are all kind of together. I don't care if you go right down the operational item agenda, gentlemen, or if you have a presentation you'd like to melt it all into. We're pretty aware of what's going on, but we do need you to give us the glossy.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. And Jason and I will do our best. And actually, our friend from the Quad City Times had a very good question here. I think I'm going to provide some clarity to that situation as well.
Okay.
As we go through. So Jason and I are probably going to talk fast, but that's not out of disrespect or anything. We have to go to the school board meeting at Pleasant Valley here, and we'll probably get on our way. So the first presentation we're going to discuss tonight is about an amendment to the urban renewal plan at Interstate 80.
Items 6 and 7 for tomorrow.
Thank you. Yes, items 6 and 7 for tomorrow. So prior to 2017, there was an urban renewal plan in this corridor. So in that area, you're talking about where the TBK Bank Sports Complex is today. Actually, it was north of I-80 up by Hidden Hills Golf Course, east of Middle Road, and south of Interstate 80 as well. So when the development agreement came together for the TBK Bank Sports Complex, we had to go through proceedings at that time to update the urban renewal plan. That was 2017. And the reason we had to update it at that time is because the area in question had expired. State statute allows for a 20-year shelf life, if you will, for an urban renewal area. So it had expired, and we had to renew the urban renewal update then in 2017. At that time, certain agricultural property owners chose not to consent to being in the urban renewal plan area. It really has no bearing on them. It has no tax impact, et cetera. But if you're an agricultural property owner of 10 acres or more and in the area that's contemplated, state code requires that you sign a consent letter to be included in that area. And again, at that time, there were a couple of folks that chose not to consent. So we moved forward and we developed the area around them. So with the future potential expansion east of Middle Road, one of those property owners that did not consent in 2017 is now consenting to being included in the urban renewal area, which is one of the triggering mechanisms that's taken place here as part of this amendment. On your screen now, you'll see a map of the entire urban renewal area. This is hundreds and hundreds of acres. It's north of Interstate 80. It's south and west of Interstate 80, south and east of Interstate 80. And the two colored sections you see here, that's actually the area that's now consenting to come into the urban renewal plan area. That's the Mildred Van Horst Trust, and they've signed their consent paperwork to be included in this entire area. So just kind of as for a frame of reference, you'll see on the screen here, this is actually where the TBK Bank Sports Complex is today. We will be discussing a development agreement for this area in question here. And then additionally up here in the Hidden Hills corridor and other areas, this is also part of the urban renewal area. And I gotta figure out how to clear this. Jason, you want to clear this by chance? Anyways, we'll move on. Pardon my drawings. I'll put a smiley face until I figure that out.
Weren't you the architect of this system?
No, sir.
Oh, I thought
I
you
plead the
were.
fifth.
Don't talk without a lawyer.
Comes the boss lady.
Here
Hey,
comes
there, I
your
got
help.
it. I got her. Thanks, boss
Updated
lady.
technology.
Jeff Ryder, Pictionary expert.
I mean, not to do that again, Your Honor.
Don't do it again, Jeff.
All right. Okay, so the items to be updated in the urban renewal plan would be that consent that we discussed, the update of our constitutional debt limit and finances, and the contemplation of any pending future development agreements, which we will talk about here in a moment. And this slide talks about the second item here, the constitutional debt limit and finances. So there was actually a question here about the potential issuance of up to $25.1 million in future indebtedness. That is it's kind of like a hall pass, if you will. We have the permission by doing this urban renewal plan to have the future issuance of up to that much amount of indebtedness for the entire urban renewal plan area. I believe it's about 900 acres in total. So if in
It's
fact
about
we had
a fifth, maybe a sixth.
right.
Okay.
So if we had a potential project, we have the capacity to issue an indebtedness amount of up to $25.1 million. It's not tied to the specific development agreement. It's just an amount we have available to us in this entire urban renewal area. Okay, so we set the public hearing and the notice of consultation for this update on January 18th. We consulted the taxing entities on January 25th and many dates after that. The Scott County Board had some questions, and as you'll see in your packet, a letter was issued by the board as well. We also have, like I said, a meeting with the school board tonight, which is a follow-up to this consultation. And then there will be the public hearing and the adoption tomorrow evening, if everything goes according to plan. So with that, very quick and concise, but are there any questions about the urban renewal plan that anyone may have?
Questions? I'm not seeing any, Jeff.
Okay.
Move
thank
on
you, Your
forward.
Honor.
Hit consents 8 and 9.
Yes, so consent 8 and 9 is a little bit more of, I think, what everyone has been anticipating. And I'm going to go through a development agreement that is part of what we've been discussing with this amendment to the urban renewal plan. And I'm glad I have my friend Jason here. As we go through this as well, it has not been any small task for our staff, and I appreciate everyone's help in putting this development agreement together. It's been a lot of work, and it affected a lot of different departments. So thanks to all the staff.
Jeff, you might also mention Joe Judge is here, and Chris Curran. They're the lawyers who worked on it. Joe represents FG Holdings LLC and Middle and Forest Grove LLC.
Yes, exactly. So they helped architect this development agreement, and again, greatly appreciated. So the city of Bettendorf will be entering into a development agreement with FG80 Holdings LLC and Middle and Forest Grove LLC, two entities. FG80 owns approximately 109 acres of real estate east of Middle Road, north of Forest Grove. On the site, MFG will construct a multi-use series of turf recreational fields. They're intended to expand and enhance the sports offerings that you currently see at the TBK Bank Sports Complex. Some of those fields will be designed to target a higher age audience, the high school and collegiate levels, so they can market to those markets as well. And then in addition to that, they'll be for youth sports, and there'll be roughly 8 ball fields or 4 soccer fields for softball, baseball, or soccer. On the site as well, MFG intends on constructing a unique golf and entertainment destination. And at the time of construction, it will be the only such facility of its kind in the state of Iowa. And we'll get into the details of what that is designed to do as well here in just a moment. Additionally, on the site, FG80 intends to develop at least 1 new hotel property, as well as adjacent commercial projects to service this entire tourism corridor. You may recall a little bit of time back, we submitted an EDA grant for a pedestrian bridge over Middle Road. We're hopeful that comes through, and we think it'll be a great amenity to connect these 2 sides of Middle Road as one major tourism corridor. To support this expansion and future development, the city will work to construct the previously planned Forest Grove Drive and Middle Road street improvements, the roundabout improvements, additional shared trails, and a pedestrian overpass that will connect it to the TBK Bank Sports Complex. As we have discussed, the urban renewal plan will be updated in advance of this development agreement tomorrow night. Additionally, as part of the development agreement, there are certain obligations and incentives that will be contemplated to ensure the success of the project. So from the developer's end, the developers, plural, MFG, will construct approximately on 45 acres 2 synthetic turf fields to accommodate 2 collegiate or high school-sized baseball diamonds, 8 youth baseball or softball diamonds, and 4 full-size soccer fields with lighting. MFG will construct a golf entertainment facility consisting of a 3-story golf range, approximately 60 hitting bays, restaurants, bars, and meeting entertainment spaces with pedestrian walking paths and parking. FG80 will develop and/or construct on roughly 64 acres a commercial corridor consisting of restaurants, stores, and at least one hotel to support the expansion of all of the activity that will be going on here and the existing TBK Bank Sports Complex. FG80 agrees to convey at no cost as well the necessary and reasonable right-of-way that will be necessary for any sort of paths, infrastructure improvements, et cetera. So we anticipate that happening actually here in the spring, and we'll talk about that in a moment as well. So when we first, one item of note really quick, when we were negotiating this development agreement, we had put in the earlier forms of the development agreement, construction on 37 acres and 38 acres respectively. And we felt it was more apropos to render exactly 45 acres and 64 acres respectively, because that's the total sum area that we're talking about, the 109 acres. So as we talked through this with everyone, it was previously shown as versions with 37 acres and 38 acres. The actual area in a total area is 45 acres and 64 acres. I just wanted to notate that as a point of clarity, because that's the total of 109 acres. That'll include all of the retention ponds, all of the area that's not buildable, but we just felt it was more apropos to list it out, so it came up to the sum total of 109 acres.
Less confusing.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
So the city obligation is tied to this as well. The city agrees to make an economic development grant to MFG in support of the project in the amount of $3 million. The grant will be made in 2 equal installments, with the first one coming on January 3rd of 23. City also agrees to make 8 annual economic development grants jointly to MFG and Betplex LLC in the amount of $350,000 beginning July 1 of 22. This is to support the overall continued economic growth and activities in the corridor. We agreed to make 40 semi-annual tax increment rebate payments over 20 years, equal to 75% of the MFG TIF revenue. And that project date is going to be set with the base valuation on January 1 of 23. I believe that, yeah. So we'll set the base valuation on January 1 of 2023 for that increment to start moving forward. And then MFG agrees to a minimum assessment agreement with a value of $16 million upon full completion of the project. So the base value will be set on January 1 of 2023. The $16 million total assessed value on the MFG project will be net of that base value. City obligations is continued here. So we're going to do a similar arrangement with FG80. 40 semi-annual tax increment rebate payments over 20 years, equal to 75% of the TIF revenue. Rebates will be derived from the revenues generated above that base value, which will be set again at January 1 of 23. Based on the nature and scope of this part of the project, it'll be built out incrementally over the first 3 years of the TIF period. So the hotel may come in year 2, it may come in year 3. Some of the other commercial components may be started immediately, while other ones might come incrementally, similar to what you saw on the TBK Bank Sports Complex side. So we agreed to a three-year minimum assessment scenario where you'd have $5 million in year 1, or it would be January 1 of 23, $9 million in January of 24, and $16 million in January of 25. So we would be ultimately achieving in this entire corridor a total net minimum assessed value of $32 million between the two entities. So the timeline for construction. It's anticipated that dirt will start moving here as soon as possible, but likely around April 1st of 22. MFG anticipates the completion of their project by December 31st of 23. I wouldn't be surprised if it's completed sooner, knowing our developer partners, but that's the window within our development agreement. FG80 anticipates partial completion of its project by December 31 of 23, with continued development occurring over the following 2 years. We as the city anticipate completion of infrastructure no later than April 1 of 23. We anticipate the completion of Forest Grove Drive and their improvements by January 1 of 24, That would be the Forest Grove Drive and the roundabouts with additional landscaping and amenities coming on board thereafter. But we anticipate that to be fully functional January of '24. And then we would anticipate the completion of the pedestrian bridge over Middle Road no later than January 1 of '25. We could possibly do that a little bit sooner, but with all of the construction in this corridor, we move that out an out year because we know that there's gonna be traffic impediments as it is, and just to put another layer of construction in a short window would have made it that much more cumbersome. So likely January 1 of '25 for the pedestrian bridge. Some items of note within the development agreement. You may recall we negotiated and worked hard on a sales tax rebate award with the state of Iowa. This was for baseball and softball complexes where the state's 5% sales tax is rebated back to the developer over 10 years. Or if it's achieved sooner, they get it back sooner, then the term is shortened by that much. So whenever we did that with the TBK Bank Sports Complex, they achieved a $2.5 million sales tax rebate award. The city was able to capture $500,000 of that $2.5 million, or 20%. If in fact we have the capacity and the ability to get a sales tax rebate award this time around, we would split that 45, 45, 10 between the city, MFG, and then 10% going to FG 80. Construction of at least one new hotel. We think it's very important that there be at least one more hotel to support this corridor. A minimum of 80 rooms would be the number, but based on hotel market today, the way in which they're constructed, it could be higher. For the sake of this agreement, we set that at 80 rooms. And like the Cambria Hotel on the other side of the street and any other future hotels that would be in these two tracts of land, there would be an obligation of a $5 per room per night fee payable to the city for any booked hotel and paid for hotel room night at the new hotel that's coming here as part of this agreement. Okay, so what does it look like today? The existing parcels in question are currently zoned agricultural. It's a lesser zoning classification as far as tax payment. By rezoning to commercial, the property tax classification increases the property taxes paid. Today, the city collects approximately $1,926 annually on the parcels in question. Under this development agreement, with the higher assessed values, the city will collect approximately $155,000 annually in debt service, which would total $3.1 million over the life of this development agreement. Additionally, the city will capture that other 25% of TIF increment, where we had stated earlier the developer will get the 75%. At a minimum assessed value in total of $32 million, that would equate to approximately $3.8 million over the life of this agreement. For our friends at the county and Pleasant Valley School District, we broke it out for them as well. Today, Scott County collects approximately $1,978 annually. Under this development agreement, the higher assessed values, they'll collect about $10,985 annually in debt service, $219,693 over the life of the development agreement. Pleasant Valley Schools collects approximately $4,500 annually. Under this agreement, the new assessed values, they will collect an average of $95,802 annually. And there is no effect on their PEPL or ISPL levies, ISEL or ISPL levies, and the debt service. Their total will be, over the life of this agreement, which is a 20-year window, $1.916 million and change. Again, and we're gonna go present on this tonight at the school board. This is a big deal for them as far as their growth area and their trajectory out there in the northeast part of Bettendorf to not have their PEPL levies affected in their ability to provide capital support. So 20 years at $90,000 or 20 years at $1.9 million, I think it's a pretty strong opportunity. So where's the payback? This is a question we kind of just threw in here to kind of show how we're going to defray the cost of the incentives we're providing to the developer. As we noted, $155,000 annually, totaling $3.1 million over 20 years in debt service. The 25% TIF increment that will be captured totals $3.8 million over the 20-year life. Very, very conservatively, we looked at this at $84,000 annually in new sales tax, which would total $1.7 million over 20 years. Again, very conservatively, this was based on 50% occupancy and 80 rooms. A new hotel and new hotel motel tax would equate to $143,000 annually for a total of $2.8 million. The room fee, again, is based on 80 rooms at 50% occupancy. That would generate $91,000 annually in the $5 room fee. $1.8 million over 20 years. And then if we were able to achieve a 45% sales tax rebate award based on a similar arrangement with the state where we got a $2.5 million total award, that would mean the city would capture $1.125 million through that sales tax rebate award. We believe that there's the potential for that number to be a $5 million total award. But again, when Jason and I really looked at this hard, we tried to be as conservative as we possible with these numbers to give a really very true and conservative scenario. So the total city revenue from the previous slide over the 20 years would equate to approximately $14.4 million. Total incentives to the developer over that period of time, mostly coming on the front end to support infrastructure, would be approximately $10.9 million. A net gain over 20 years to the city of Bettendorf of roughly $3.5 million. And I think Jason would concur that these are incredibly conservative estimates. And contrary to where we were at with the Betplex LLC deal, we did not have a very strong frame of reference. We had an agricultural greenfield site. Sports complexes were kind of up and coming. We now have a huge frame of reference to say that these numbers are fair, conservative, and beyond a shadow of a doubt, I think we can definitely agree on the fact that $3.5 million will easily be achieved over 20 years. Some additional items of note that are very, very cool, creative, awesome, and also some prosperous. Thank you, sir.
Pick another pillar. You got a few left.
Connected.
Thank you, Renee, for your hard work on that before your
Thank you,
new
Renee.
gig.
There's some very unique information that was provided to us by Visit Quad Cities. The TBK Bank Sports Complex saw over 1.5 million visits in 2021 by individuals over the age of 18 alone. This expansion is going to help grow that number exponentially, which will increase the sales tax, hotel motel tax, and property tax, which will take our conservative numbers, we believe, to higher levels. Due in part to the success of the TBK Bank Sports Complex and the debt service captured by the city staff proposed on Saturday a 15-cent reduction in the levy to City Council in, like I said, in this past Saturday's budget session. It's not because of the TBK Bank Sports Complex, but that is certainly one of the areas where we have seen great opportunity, and that's one of the levers we believe is helping us to suggest that 15-cent reduction. The development agreement has assisted the city with their conversations with the Iowa Department of Transportation to really push that I-80 and Middle Road interchange to get it done as quickly as possible and get that into their 5-year plan. If there was no TBK Bank Sports Complex today, no future development, a tight diamond interchange would continue to be pushed off in the out years. But because of that, we now have that as a catalyst to help us really push that message and get it in the 5-year plan. We know additional commercial developments are already being contemplated in addition to this. And then just in closing really quick, subject to council's proceedings, there's gonna be a press conference Wednesday at the TBK Bank Sports Complex at 9 a.m. where the developers will have engineering drawings, site design, architectural renderings, and virtual renderings of the entire corridor. So we're really looking forward to that as well. So future expansion plans will all be on display as part of this announcement Wednesday at 9 a.m. With that, Your Honor, I think we're happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Jerry?
Thank you, Your Honor. You mentioned that it's 109 acres, but they're not developing 109 acres now. They're only developing something less.
Yes.
So the difference there, the TIF applies to it too. So if they build something else on one of those outlots, why that's also included in the TIF.
That's correct. So the development agreement, when we started to discuss this, MFG and FG80 would develop 37 and 38 acres respectively. There's a total acreage here of 109 acres. For any, as Mayor Gallagher stated, for any misinterpretation or confusion on the future side of this, we chose to show the entire 109 acres and how they fell under the ownership scenario. Some of this acreage will never be developed because of the topography, the way in which the land lays out, retention, public right-of-way, et cetera. But we wanted to attribute all 109 acres to both of the two development factions. There could be future development though as well that would fall under this for sure. So 109 acres in total, about 75 is developed at this time.
Follow-up question is, right now it's got a base value, and in fact, the agreement talks about picking a base value, what, a year from now?
January 1 of 23, yes.
So that base value, the TIF doesn't apply to it, correct? So they pay 100% of the taxes, and the city keeps 100% of the taxes.
Whatever that value is at
Whatever that
January 1
value
of
is.
23, they will pay full freight taxes on that in perpetuity.
So right now it's ag land, so,
Right now, it's like 450,000 and change, more
but
or
it's,
less.
but it's pretty low because it is ag land.
Yes.
But I anticipate it'll be rezoned probably within the next year.
It'll be rezoned to commercial.
And at that point in time,
It'll be a commercial tax paying
we
entity.
assume the assessor will assess it accordingly.
That's correct. And then any construction that occurs this year, between now and January 1 of 23, whatever is achieved there in taxable valuation, that will be set, and we will collect full freight taxes on that, because we're setting the base on January 1 of 23. And that's something we really have no control over. You have to set the base in the year in which the TIF starts. So the developer chose to start that clock January 1 of 23. So, I mean, it could be $1 million by January 1 of 23. We don't know.
We don't know yet.
So it'll be dependent on how much he gets developed by that time, so.
And then the agreement includes the requirement that the city put in the road, that curved road. Does the agreement have a firm limit on the city's obligation? In other words, that 34 acres that's in the back, it's not being developed, let's say a detention pond. If the developer decided he wanted a road going back to maintain the detention pond, is the city protected so that the developer can't come to us and say, you agreed to put in all the roads?
We
We
will go,
didn't agree to put in all the roads, we just put in the one, but I want to make sure the agreement nails it down.
It'll be set by the plat. And Brent, you might want to explain that for the council.
Yeah, so there's going to be a final plat that'll be accompanying the rezoning once that comes in. I think I talked to Jerry about this beforehand. The street hasn't been named yet, but for simplicity's sake, let's say it's gonna be Competition Drive, as it'll line up with Competition on the west side of Middle Road. That will be the only public street component. So that is the only paving that's in the agreement. The internal entry road, as it's defined, is just that street.
Thank you. And then the next question is, if the city is unable to meet our obligation by the date set, you know, we used the word anticipate. What if we, due to labor shortage, material shortage, war in Ukraine or whatever, we can't make it? Is there a penalty to the city?
there's no penalty to the city. I think if we anticipated some level of catastrophic event or shortages, et cetera, we would probably have to go back and discuss the term with the developer. Our ability to perform is probably gonna be very similar to their abilities to perform. And if we have construction shortages, they're likely bearing witness to the same issues. So that's a term where we're gonna have to negotiate that if in fact it becomes about. But, and Brett, correct me if I'm wrong, we were very, very conservative on this timeline as well, to make sure that we had enough time to build out what we needed to do. So this is not an aggressive timeline. We tried to do this to make sure that we had enough time to perform.
If I could just clarify too, I mean, the agreement does have a force majeure clause that protects both sides equally for weather, labor, pandemics, et cetera. So if that were the reason that the city couldn't perform, that would not be a breach. Similarly, the developers have obligations, and if they were prevented from performing or from meeting those obligations for those reasons, they would not be in breach of contract. So if that's helpful, Jerry.
Yeah. And my last question is, we've got feedback from TBK on the current development. Have we got any feedback from Visit Quad City or Chamber of Commerce to indicate that that facility has drawn additional people to Bettendorf? We're looking for young professionals to move here. Has that helped draw them to our city, or are they still trying to go to Chicago?
I don't have residential calculations that suggest that people have moved here because of it, but we do have very strong numbers from Visit Quad Cities to show attendance at the sports complex. There was over 587,000 booked nights in the Quad Cities because of events at the TBK Bank Sports Complex in 2021. So as I had mentioned, 1.5 million visitors, 587,000 booked nights in the Quad Cities because of it. Mr. Harrell, I believe, is coming tomorrow night from Visit Quad Cities as well, and I think he actually issued a letter today that we're
Did
gonna
we
get-
share that letter? It'll be in the council packet. Do we have, is it,
We're
everybody
gonna
seen that?
present it to all of you tomorrow.
Okay,
We can certainly.
I've
get
seen
that
it, I
out.
know, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying, because that is the numbers that Jerry's asking about.
Right,
Yeah, because
so.
we're hoping that some of those people staying in the hotel were actually here to look for houses and move here with their
At
jobs.
least get introduced to the community so that when that opportunity may arise, they think positive about the community. I think that's kind of the ground level idea in CBBs.
Yeah, so he has a strong list of numbers that he can share with you tomorrow as well. But to your point, over 1.5 million visits, 587,000 people overnight. Sales tax numbers are very strong. All of that'll be presented as well tomorrow by Mr. Harrell. He issued a letter today. Actually, we can release that to you tonight.
You
That's
bet.
no trouble.
Please, yeah.
We were trying to be respectful. He dated it tomorrow.
Oh.
but I don't think
I didn't catch that.
that matters to him too much. I think he's happy to provide that tonight as well.
Yeah.
So, that's no trouble.
I think once we get it, it becomes public anyway, and we'll just kick it out so everybody can see it tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You betcha. Any other questions? Yes, Scott Webster.
Any additional area, I'm just trying to clarify, not necessarily for me, maybe for the audience. Any additional construction there that may be TIF'd is still only subject to a rebate TIF, which means that we're not necessarily paying them. We're just rebating 75% of their taxes back, correct?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Webster. That's a very good point. And when it comes to TIF rebate, this is a rebate of property taxes paid by these developers for anything they create.
Yeah, which means today they're paying very little.
Yes.
They're only getting a rebate on the additional taxes.
Correct.
And only at a rate of 75% if there's development beyond what's already contemplated. Development that's already contemplated is technically only getting that, plus they're getting some economic development grants, but really they're getting a rebate for a good chunk of that.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Oh, Jesus, everybody's got one.
that's,
There's one for everybody. Perfect. I already got it. That's the
that's it,
letter
I
we're
guess. I'm
passing it
gonna
out.
figure out what this is.
This is the letter from Mr. Harrell, I believe.
Yes. Forget about Greg. Oh, Greg isn't gonna get a letter. He's not here.
It's right.
Hey, Greg. Any other
It's at his
questions?
desk, he can read it from there.
Any other questions? All right, let's move on to items. Greg, do you have any questions? Just ask, this guy's on it, this Greg guy, I know he is. Items 10 and 11.
I'll take those, Your Honor.
Thank you.
We've been, it seems, in process of this bond sale for the last couple of council cycles. As you know, we have a bond sale set for March 1. In total, about $19 million of bonds will be sold. You've already held a public hearing on $13 million of that, which is related specifically to the city's CIP projects, roads, sewers, et cetera. Tomorrow night, there will be a public hearing and a resolution instituting proceedings on an additional, it says not to exceed 7 million, but it's just about 6 million in urban renewal bonds. 2.9 will be tax exempt GO urban renewal bonds and used for building infrastructure related to this development. For example, the interior road, the extension of Forest Grove Road and an extra roundabout, things of that nature. There's a $3.095 million piece that is taxable, urban renewal, GO bonds. That'll be Series 2022B. That will be used as part of the economic development grant package approved in the development agreement. So those two pieces will be part of the public hearing tomorrow night, component pieces of the larger bond sale on March 1st.
Any questions for Jason? Yes. Scott? Webster.
These are currently in our budget that you just went through recently and
Yes.
are still contemplated after dropping the levy on the,
Absolutely. We have budget available to handle the upfront debt service and contemplated going forward with the debt levy reduced.
Other questions? All right, seeing none, let's first entertain a motion to allow items 6 and 7 to appear on the operational item agenda tomorrow.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor? Any opposed? Let's move to 8 and 9. Can I get a motion to?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And items 10 and 11 to appear tomorrow.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll take all those up as public hearings and the following resolution tomorrow evening on our operational agenda. Mr. Blaine.
Your Honor, before Jeff and Jason leave for their PV meeting, I just want to tell you that we've been working on this for probably 6 months, I would say, strong for 3 months. And Jeff has been kind of lead dog in the sled, but Jason, Chris, Brent, and Brian have been all over this because this involved multiple departments. I think Mark might have been involved on the periphery. They did a phenomenal job. We went through lots of iterations of this and brought to you what we think is a really exciting development that will get shared by the developer on Wednesday, but the component parts for the financial stability of this and the city's involvement in this were well thought out, well conceived, well braced, so that the city can make the economic grants to make this happen, but have tremendous upside on the financial end of this, and more importantly, have tremendous upside for this community. So I can't thank them enough for the work that they did, how professional they were, how engaged they were, and this is a phenomenal piece of work, frankly.
Most of which got done while you were in Hawaii, so way to go, guys. Now, thank you, Decker, for your kind words. Good job, everybody, and thanks, Decker, for your work on this as well.
thank you.
Off with you.
Appreciate it.
Pleasant Valley awaits. Knock it out of the park, gentlemen. Thank you for being here. Thanks for doing that. Joe, thanks for coming. Have a great night. Okay. Now we get the opportunity to welcome the president and CEO of the United Way of the Quad Cities, Renee Gellerman. Renee, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Sorry that we made you wait, but that you know why. You dropped something just in case you might need that.
I think you set up my little presentation very well. Okay, great. Well, I am here to share a big initiative the United Way is rolling out next week. I wanted you to know in advance. We, as most of you know, we focus in the areas of education, income, and health. And we've been doing some analysis on the impact of COVID on our academic achievement of our students in the region. So I'm here to talk to you about that today. I'm going to start by just showing you, demonstrating where we are with third grade reading proficiency in the community.
We're not going to like this much, are we?
I'm sorry?
I'm going to love your presentation. I don't think we're going to like the numbers very much. I'm a little worried.
You might recognize this fella. Is there sound?
Bert.
Yep, we got it.
Bert. There you go. And then he says, in
She looks like
the
she's teaching you how to read pretty well.
fish bowl. Bert.
Where the fish go wrong?
Yeah. And he says, Ernie, now where are the fish? And what's he say? The
The
fish
are
are in your
your shoe.
cowboy hat.
Cowboy hat.
And then what does he say?
And
That was a third grader that Decker was reading with. And for those of you that, oops, wrong one, sorry. For those of you that can appreciate third grade, by third grade, you need to know your sight words. You need to be reading proficiently because it's the biggest indicator whether a student's going to be graduating from high school on time and be prepared for success. So when we think about where we are today, these are all third graders here in the Quad Cities. Decker's been helping us kind of get ready to launch this. I'm meeting with all the city councils, school boards, county boards to share this insight along with a lot of other individuals. We are working with all the superintendents in Scott County and Rock Island County, and this is a unified effort because we have some challenges ahead of us. And Jerry was asking about talent attraction. Well, I'm here to talk about talent retention and the quality of the talent here in the Quad Cities. These kids are third graders. They've never been in a full year of school. Most third graders have not. So we have about 25,000 kids under third grade in the Quad Cities. So these are kids that are at high risk because I'm going to show you some of the data. When we look at the scope of learning loss, we're comparing it to pre-pandemic. So pre-pandemic, this was already a priority for United Way, and we were working and investing in this area and working with different partners. We were at a reading proficiency as a region, Scott, Rock Island County at 61%. Today, we're at 30%. And we also look at by population. We all have heard about opportunity gaps in different populations. Well, the gap is more prevalent than ever, but all students were affected with reading proficiency. And this is just where we benchmark at this point. We know math and science are going to be a big issue too. We've started here because it was such a priority for United Way in our schools, our partnership right now. So if we look at by population, you can see before the pandemic, 37% of Black students were reading proficiently. Now about 1 in 10 are reading proficiently. In the Hispanic community, 52% before COVID, and today 24%. When we look at white students, 63% pre-pandemic, and now 36%. Last week, I met with all the superintendents with the editorial board for the Quad City Times and the Dispatch. They'll be writing an editorial this weekend. And, we had the superintendents from Bettendorf, we had the superintendents from Pleasant Valley, along with the other ones, sitting right next to one another. They work very closely together all year round and talked about these are our kids. Doesn't matter where they live. This is the talent that we are filling the pipeline for our future workforce and the people that are making decisions for the quality of our community in the future. So just to give, for those of you that may not have a full scope of the relevancy of third grade reading, I already mentioned the statistics with graduation, but third grade is pivotal because it's up until then that they're reading to learn, but at third grade, they really have to be able to read to learn. And so that's a critical milestone. We've been really digging into this data and wanted to make sure that we're investing our resources in the right place. So we learned a lot about third grade reading proficiency. Third grade reading proficiency, actually, I happen to know that the Juvenile Detention Center that's being discussed for Scott County, one of the metrics that they look at is third grade reading proficiency. So a third grader that's not reading proficiently is twice as likely to end up in prison and on public welfare. They are likely to they're likely to get behind in school and drop out. It's a critical milestone. So we are mobilizing people and resources, and we're gonna stand in line behind our teachers and our educators, and we're gonna do something about it. And we know that this will work because we've done it before. In 2019, United Way mobilized 100 adults to go into various schools in the Quad Cities, and they committed to read one-on-one with a student for 30 minutes for a minimum of 8 weeks. Sometimes people do it for longer, and the results are amazing. If we do it, we have an online program too, where we could do it online. So kids that are involved in our online one-on-one mentoring and tutoring program, we saw a 96% increase in proficiency. If you do it in person, it's about 85% in person improvement in reading proficiency. So we have a goal of recruiting 500 adults in the Quad Cities who are willing to commit to 30 minutes once a week to read with the same student. We figured out how we could pair people up. So if Decker can't commit to every week, we could pair up, and we would have the same student, and we would just make sure we covered that student. We're looking at this session as a commitment through the end of May. We'll continue this on in the future. So we'll do a summer program, then we'll start it back up in the fall. We're also looking to raise $500,000, and these funds will go to support the out-of-school literacy programs, early education, because if a child's ready to succeed in kindergarten, if they're successful in kindergarten, they're twice as likely to be reading by third grade. We know that enrollment for kindergarten was down about 6%, 40% less kids in preschool programs over the last 2 years. We know that we have an issue at that end of the spectrum as well. We'll be also funding mentoring and then parenting programs to make sure our parents are as equipped as they could be to be empowered to be their child's first and best teacher. We have 14 sites that we've already received a commitment from, so these are the sites. I've highlighted Bettendorf for you, and we expect Moline to be coming on here. We just started in the approval process, but we have 14 sites. These are kindergarten through third grade. We have a couple nonprofits that will be doing preschool programs as well. And you can see across the board, we did prioritize Title I schools, and it was up to the school to be able to work with us on this program. We expect more sites to come on, but there are some resources and staff needs that help us with this. So right now we have 380 students waiting. And as of today, we have about 100 people that have already signed up. So we're well on our way just by having these small group sort of meetings. And so my ask of you today is to consider being a reading volunteer. And it would be fabulous if you would encourage the city staff. You think about a police officer or fireman or woman making that kind of commitment. Our superintendents talk about it's more than reading. It is helping build confidence in our readers, to have an adult to talk to. Kids have really been struggling with social emotional issues, especially through COVID, and our superintendents are really excited to be able to match up caring adults with these struggling readers. Of course, we are looking for money, so if you're so inclined, we're looking to raise money to support and bolster those out-of-school programs, and then champion education and appreciate our teachers. We've heard in many meetings with our superintendents and teachers of sort of the discourse and the divisiveness among parents and students and adults and teachers. And our teachers have really shouldered a lot. When I have listened to the stories of the things that they have shouldered, it's a lot. And a lot of these teachers have children of their own, and they've had to cope and evolve and navigate and through COVID. And we are here to make sure that we show our appreciation to the teachers. So when you get the opportunity to do that, please do. You know, we've really prioritized education at the United Way. 40% of our funding goes to education. Education is the very best investment we can make, best pathway out of poverty, because it's a place where people gain the confidence and skills to do that. And so I would entertain any questions, or I would ask Decker, as a board member of United Way and as the star of the video, to add any insight I might have missed.
Well, I would just say this. I just went there for the commercial, to make the commercial, obviously. And but this little girl just touched your heart with, she wanted to read. She really wanted to engage. she didn't know me from Adam, and she just started talking and trying to sound this stuff out. And the piece is only 1:20. I think we had a half an hour filming, and it was just an incredible experience. And I felt just rewarded to be there and do it. But she was the star, because she was waiting for me to get there and reading to one of the staff or technical people, and she was just reading as much as she could. She knew exactly where that book belonged in the library at the school in Rock Island, and she put it back, and then she said, and if you come back, this is where it'll be if you want to read it. And I was like, oh, okay, well, thank you very much. So it doesn't seem like much of an ask, and I know we'll be talking to the folks at Rotary, and you don't have to do it. You could do it in Bettendorf. There's schools that Bettendorf is going to host. It doesn't have to be a long drive. You don't have to drive all the way to Rock Island or Davenport to do this. Although I think, wherever we go, everybody's going to need us, and I think it was a cool thing, and we can't wait, and we got to get going on this. So.
Very true, very true. Any questions for Renee? Bill?
Renee, has there been any discussion with the local librarians as to how they can assist with this?
The libraries are helping us recruit volunteers, and they're thinking about how they might be a site to do reading as well. For sure, they've been brought up a few times, so thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, Lisa.
Say, Renee, count me in as far as volunteering. I'm a retired educator. And I don't know if you've checked, like Scott Community College has a children's lit course they teach. Maybe some of those students, maybe it could be worked in the curriculum to have volunteer hours or something.
Excellent idea.
And their clubs
Thank you,
are
Lisa.
required to do volunteer hours.
Excellent idea. Very good. In all, if you would sign up today to read, it's a total of eight hours. So it's just 30 minutes and it's 8 hours, and it could change a kid's life.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much, Renee. Always a pleasure to see you. Please
Well, thank you,
give our
everyone,
best to your
for all you
family.
do. Michelle, what do you want me to do here?
Take care of it. Thank you.
All right. Brian's going to talk to us about our solid waste collection. You have in front of you the cart sizes in a nice color package. You also have Chapter 3 entitled Solid Waste of the City Code. This is a draft that circulated, I think, weeks, maybe a month or so ago in original form. So this is something that it's been on Brian's mind for many months and ours for about a month or so. Brian, you have the floor. Tell us what you want us to consider.
Thank you, Your Honor. In front of you today, you have a draft ordinance. You have seen this before. We have discussed this in informational meetings as well. Our existing ordinance is a good ordinance, but yet a lot of our methodologies as far as our delivery in the collection of solid waste and recycling has changed. This new ordinance reflects it. We did have a lot of good language that seemed to be scattered around the existing ordinance, and this actually groups it up into actually 2 articles, one being solid waste control and solid waste collection. When you look through it, the first part of it has an updated definitions section. A lot of these changes were updated because there was code changes in Iowa code and also the Iowa administrative code, and these definitions reflect those updated definitions. On page 6, under Article 8-3-12, we added a section in there, an enhanced section in there. We did have some language in our existing ordinance, but this actually discusses in more detail the preparation of waste prior to collection. States as all garbage, paper scraps, letters, sweepings, and everything shall be free of all liquids and drained, and then actually placed in sealed plastic or paper bags prior to dumping or putting them into the containers. A lot of times what we do is we see a lot of residents who actually just place a lot of material just loosely into the container, and then when our guys go to tip it, because it is an automated service, if it's a windy day, it'll catch it and disperse it all over the neighborhood. So we're trying to minimize that and actually put in there that we would like to have it placed in bags prior to placing it into the container.
On the garbage side,
On the garbage side, yes, sir. We do not want the
plastic bags,
recyclables
no.
to be bagged. That's all with the single stream recycling is to actually clean the material prior to placing it loosely into your recycling container. The container shall not be overfilled and the lid must be fully closed by the resident at the time of pickup. We're seeing a lot of individuals who are stacking garbage on top, just overstuffing some of these cans. We're trying to get away from that. Please right-size your cans. If you're noticing that you have a lot of excess garbage continually, we ask that you actually size your container, or you actually place it alongside the container with a sticker, which is $1.60 for additional pickup. Solid waste and recycling containers, we talk about those, where they're gonna be placed, and if you need additional containers. Commercial containers, we added in there that every person owning and managing commercial premises where solid waste shall be stored shall be into the bulk metal containers and or dumpsters. When we talk about storage of residential containers, we're stating that the residential solid waste and recycling containers shall be stored inside the building on the premises or behind the front building line against the principal structure or screened as visibly to the greatest extent possible. Commercial solid waste containers, this was an item of contention as we look through site plans, is to ensure that the dumpster is actually screened and placed on a concrete pad and well drained. We actually have a section under, once you move into Article B, under solid waste collection, we clearly define residential collection, commercial collection, and then private street collection. This is one of the things too that we have had to deal with continually as we see some of these private streets starting to get in deteriorated conditions, and we've had problems in some cases of them not clearing the snow or excess tree growth that has prevented our vehicles to access the private roads and to make the collection point. So we actually have defined certain factors inside this ordinance that we would like the residents to do if we continue to provide collection on private streets. Talk about collection of recyclables. This was a change because if you recall, the existing ordinance still has the old language in it to where we actually have the split container or the divider that was in the interior can, and this is where the new ordinance obviously says with the new volunteer single stream recycling program is where you place clean, loose materials into the recycling can, and all that information is placed on our new city website that actually links to the Scott County Waste Commission of all the recyclables. We also have the sticker on the can as well. Collection of yard waste. One of the things that we wanted to add in there is that tree debris, branches, trunks, and stumps resulting from the removal of trees by a tree service contractor needs to be removed by that contractor and not the city. Collection of bulky waste. We wanted to clean some of that up on the bulky waste section. We do add a section in our city of Bettendorf's website that actually adds acceptable items for bulky waste. We wanted to note on page 12 that bulky waste is not overflow household garbage produced in excess of the city-owned container. Cardboard boxes and or containers containing refuse is not bulky waste. So a lot of times what we're doing is we're seeing large cardboard boxes just stuffed with garbage during our bulky waste program. We're trying to get away from that because that is truly garbage. Bulky waste is large items such as furniture, your white goods, such as stoves and refrigerators and water heaters and things of that nature. All those items are listed on the City of Bettendorf's website.
Is that fairly frequent, Brian?
It is frequent. It's getting more and more frequent to where we've seen it more frequently during the pandemic, where a lot of people have had a lot of time at home and just have removed everything that were that they had in their home and just kind of threw it at the curb and expected us to pick it up.
So what's the recourse if you run across that under this ordinance?
As far as if they do it, we would go
Yeah.
ahead and we'd place a sticker on their can and ask them to actually bag that garbage and get it and put stickers on it, and then we will come in and collect it.
Okay.
Then, under the garbage and recycling collection rates, one of the things too that we are proposing is that effective April 1 of this year, any new solid waste accounts will be serviced by either a 64-gallon can or a 96-gallon can. Effective April 1 of this year through April 24th, the 32-gallon every other week service will be phased out over a 2-year period, and the resident will be responsible to pay for the 32-gallon weekly service. If you currently have a 32-gallon service, you will be able to continue this service and pay the monthly fees accordingly. However, if you move within the city, or if your can is lost, damaged, or stolen, you will be replaced with a 64-gallon can, and you will pay those fees accordingly. I've shown you here, I've included at all your area there, a picture of the 3 cans and the sizes and approximately how many kitchen garbage bags can be held in each of those containers as demonstrated by staff. So I'll answer any questions. I know that I've received some comments already from some of the aldermen. I just want to let you know that tonight is just the draft ordinance that I'm presenting to you. There is no action tonight or tomorrow. This will give you an opportunity over the next 2 weeks to provide me any questions or comments, and then we can incorporate those and discuss them. I do anticipate in 2 weeks at a committee of the whole where we will go over this one more time with any revisions that we discuss, and then we will move forward on possibly placing it in front of you for adoption.
Any questions? Scott Webster.
Thank you, Your Honor. My first question is I see a lot of don't do this and don't do that, but I don't see anything about what you're gonna do to somebody who does do that in here. Typically in our ordinances, don't we put some sort of reaction to the action? I mean, if somebody overfills their can, are you not gonna pick it up? You're gonna give them a warning? Do they pay a penalty? I mean, what do they necessarily do? I mean,
Right now, we currently do not have any language in our existing ordinance that addresses it. We've done a pretty good job in just putting a sticker on people's containers, encouraging them to follow the ordinance, and if they don't, then we obviously could move to other recourse, but we typically get, after a few times with the resident, they get it and they'll go ahead and start following our policies.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but I think some actions that a resident could take with respect to their garbage could rise to the level of, a municipal infraction, even some sort of environmental issue theoretically. What we tried to do here was to give Brian discretion to say to somebody, you are exceeding what's reasonable for bulky waste, or you aren't handling your recycling properly, and we aren't going to take it, or we are going to take steps to not have the way that you're using the recycling service mess up the recycling for everybody else. So it's basically giving discretion to tell that person, we aren't going to accept what you're trying to give us. And I mean, we can look at whether we need to be clearer on potential penalties, but I think that that's already handled in the code elsewhere.
And I guess normally then I would have saw that. Some of the other codes we've had hands it to the department head and says it's to the department head's discretion.
Doesn't this one do that with the non-conforming
I
containers?
don't know.
We would,
I could have missed it.
You got non-conforming containers you don't have to pick up, or if they violate it, you've put in here a provision that you wouldn't have to pick it up.
That is correct.
That's kind of,
Which section's that in?
the non-conforming containers is under solid waste and recycling containers, A3, A13, D, so it's really on page 8 at the top. And then I think you put in here, under solid waste collection, you've got an opportunity to not pick it up.
There's a section on
Under
recycling, there's,
collection of recyclables,
Yeah.
and so that would be B.
Right.
City may elect to suspend recycling service and remove all containers from the premises if they're not doing it right.
Well, that's one of the things that we're seeing.
I think that that's what they're contemplating, but I don't know if there's anything else. There's nothing in here for anything else, but you could say, hey, we've warned you, you're not complying, we're not picking it up.
Right, and one of the.
Go find somebody
there's
else to do it.
certain areas of the city that we're seeing a lot of garbage placed in recycling cans, and that's where item 83B-7 under collection of recyclables, we add a sentence in there. If the director determines that the owner or occupant of a residential premise is not using the recycling containers as intended, including placing garbage or yard waste in the recycling containers, the city may elect to suspend the recycling service and remove the can from the premises.
So think about that, and if you want to put something else in there, we got a couple of weeks before anybody's gonna take a look at it. Feel
think the
okay
other-
with that?
Yeah, I mean, my only other was a comment. These are, like, this is a huge ordinance. Obviously, we got time to look through it, but sometimes redlining these is a little bit easier.
Oh, for the
Showing what it
changes?
used to be, because I don't know what it used, I mean, I can go back and pull the code to see what it used to be, but I don't know.
There would be so many red lines, it would be.
This is kind of a
This is like a redo.
yeah.
I mean, it looks as though it's a total rewrite of two, so it's
In essence.
Yeah, take a
think you
little
said-
time.
a red line at one point.
You
in
could
time.
read it as you get ready for bed. Put you to sleep. Bill?
So looking at your timeline that's proposed, Brian, your guy that has the 32-gallon container that stuffs 96 gallons of stuff into it with a ramrod, you're gonna deal with him for 2 more years on this?
I think, Bill, to
Wouldn't it be brighter to say, we're gonna give everybody at least a 64?
On July 1.
But we'll only charge you for the old rate through that time. Then that takes away the guy that just overstuffs that 32-gallon and you turn it upside down and can't get anything to fall out of it.
Yeah, and I thought about that, Bill, thank you. We currently have about 13,680 cans out there in the field. 23.5% of those are 32 gallons. So we have 3,216 cans of 32. The cost of replacing those to a 64 is $55.17. So if we did that, that would cost the city $178,000 right up front to do that.
So it's,
So we were just kind of phasing it out over a
okay, to help us
few-year
out,
period
not
to help us-
necessarily.
Correct, because we know that
They die.
there's a lag time, a significant lag time with manufacturers on getting the 32-gallon cans, because a lot of municipalities have moved to the larger cans, either a 64 or 96. And the manufacturers then have to switch the molds on those. So they wait till they get a large group of individuals who are actually buying those, and then they'll switch the molds and then make them and then distribute them out. So that's kind of why we were looking at phasing it out over a few-year period. I would love to sit there and be able to pull them out and just charge them the 32-gallon price over a 2-year period, but it comes down to economics and delivery time of those types of containers.
Well, if you gotta pay $57,000 now, or you gotta pay it over 2 years, what's the difference?
Yeah.
well, I think the other,
If you can't get them, that's another point.
I think the other point, Bill, as we know and you know, not everybody's a violator. So we have good citizens who are doing the 32-gallon can, both in there either every or twice a month pickup or once a month, that aren't causing us issues. And to throw them into a category to say everybody has to change at one time, we know that's not quite the case. Plus, we were trying to accommodate, how do we work this in from a budget standpoint? And we couldn't order and get them all at the same time. So if we phased it in as either they were leaving the program or somebody's coming on the program. But I think to the point about the abusers, I think we're just gonna have to stop picking up those who are abusing it and give the guys direction. If you got an abuser, we're gonna have to deal with that person. And we'd be happy to give them the opportunity to go to a 64 to help them with their inability to read. Maybe we can introduce them to Renee
Well, maybe-
about reading.
Maybe you put some language in there that if this person is an abuser, that,
They have no choice.
yeah, that he gets a 64 immediately and will be charged for it.
I think one of the reasons this is in front of you is for exactly this reason, is we need your input. Because we know that there are gonna be people that say, hey, I'm just fine and I don't need this. Or I'm sure there's gonna be people that say, I don't generate this much garbage because that's the reason we ended up going to the 32. When we first started this program 22 years ago, 23 years ago, the staff
Say
recommended.
It wasn't that long ago, but that's the reason we went to 32.
Well, that's exactly the reason we went to the 32. Lisa's right. We had conceived at the staff level that we would do 64 and 95. We didn't have 32 in the mix. But because we had all these public meetings and the people were, hey, I don't generate that much garbage. I don't have room for one of these. I'd like a 32. So we did that. Well, part of the issue now is the design of the can. Once the garbage goes down into the bottom of that chute, if another bag goes in, even if it's just heavy enough, it creates a vacuum and it won't come out. So practically speaking, the 64 is more effective for us. But we didn't want to make this wholesale change and cause a lot of issues for constituents at one time, when we can maybe roll this in over a couple-year period. You're right, we got to deal with the offenders. We should be dealing with the offenders. And if worse comes to worse, I believe it is a municipal infraction. We could also cite people if we had to get there, but we'll get their attention a lot quicker if we take their garbage can and say, find your own place to go with this. And we got to do education.
Are we ever gonna get to a point where we can just charge by weight and it doesn't matter? I mean, it's out there in other cities.
That's a whole new process.
Yeah, that's a whole different process.
I would love to get
There's
there.
variability, there's a lot of variability in that too, because then all of a sudden, I have talked to some public works directors in some municipalities that have that. There's a lot of that in Florida. And what they do see is a lot of people dumping garbage into other people's cans to lighten up their load, so they don't
Hey,
have
don't
to
give
pay
them all the secrets already.
higher fees. So anyway, I have talked to my colleagues around the state that run solid waste programs. Iowa City is all just 65-gallon containers. Des Moines is a 64 and 96. West Des Moines, 48 and 96. Urbandale, strictly 96. Waukee has 96, but they do issue 65s and on occasion 60 or 35-gallon containers for those who are a single elderly individual or no more than 2 people in the house. Clive, 96 and 48s. Burlington, 95, 65s, and 35s. Cedar Rapids, they only have 35-gallon containers. It's nothing but an issue, but nothing but a problem for them. But they require that any excess bags over a 35 has to be stickered or they will not pick it up. So I just wanted to kind of give you a broad brush stroke of what other municipalities are doing across the state, kind of similar in size. And they have all kind of phased out of that. Keep in mind though too, a lot of these municipalities in the center of the state are having it all farmed out. I mean, we do our own collection, but they actually have a contractor that actually will pick up all the garbage, and that is all, they just go ahead and say, you're doing a 64 and 96 period, and they don't even mess with it, because they know the problems associated with the 32-gallon can. A lot of them, from what I've heard across the state, is that over the past few years, we've seen a significant number of individuals who are buying more stuff online. So what they're doing is they have excess garbage as far as recycled materials, but if the recycling container is exceeded, then they just go ahead and stuff it into their garbage can. So, anyway.
Jerry, go ahead.
We will issue them a second recycle container if they request it, correct?
Yes, sir.
Free.
Yeah, and that's free of charge, because we only charge for the garbage can, whatever size garbage can you have. That includes your recycling, your bulky waste, and your yard waste collection across the board.
Yeah, so some of these people in getting a lot of Amazon packages, they maybe should consider asking for a second can.
Correct, and that is on our website too, and it's even specifically written in this ordinance that additional containers of recycling do not cost any more money. There has been discussions of, well, if we move from a 32 to a 64, it may be a little more cumbersome for an elderly person to handle that can, but keep in mind, everybody who has a 32-gallon can also has a 96-gallon recycling container And we have not had any calls at Public Works saying that that can was too large to handle.
I think the only reason we did the 32 was it was all, the complaint was about money, wasn't it?
Well, and it was also about size. There were people that said, I don't generate that much garbage, I don't need something that big. And we were trying to go from the system of they had their own can, we didn't provide the can, to going to uniform can, and we needed to get a kind of a count of how many were gonna be there. And there was quite a bit of noise about cost and size.
Any other questions? Okay, well, got a couple more weeks. You can take a look at it, and we'd love to hear any other ideas that you might have when you take a look at it. Let's take a look at the rest of the agenda. Your committee of the whole agenda at 3 and 4 has consent and then remaining consent. I'm guessing maybe one of those was agenda items, but let's start there. Anything on our normal agenda that, for tomorrow night, that any person would like to discuss at this time? I'm gonna tee Chris up on 14 and 15, site license agreements, amendments to the tower at 925 21st Street. Can you just
Yes, thank
give me a
you.
heads up on
Sure,
those?
thank you, Your Honor. We do have a public hearing on this amendment to this tower lease on 21st and Central approximately. The reason we're having a public hearing is because the overall lease is in excess of 3 years. There are a few years remaining on the lease. There are no financial changes to the amendment. It's simply to update the exhibit for the equipment that's presently on the tower. The licensee can make certain changes without getting an amendment. Several changes have taken place over the years. Thought it seemed like it made sense to update that exhibit to just sort of set the baseline again. So there are no financial changes in that arrangement.
Okay.
But there will be a public hearing because it's a lease that exceeds 3 years.
Okay, makes sense.
What are we currently getting a month?
A little
Lease
short of
on
two,
that.
a little short of 2,000 on that. This is AT&T. This is one of their bigger sites.
Any other questions on agenda items? All right, let's move to consent. Any particular item on consent? Any council member would like to ask questions about or get more information on at this time? Yes, Scott Webster.
Consent M.
I was going to ask about that too.
Were you?
Brent or Brian, can you help us with consent M? This is a change order already for a utility burial project on Forest Grove. Was this,
Brent can.
somebody help us, Brent?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
So there's a couple things that we have had to add to the Forest Grove utility burial project. So if you remember, when we bid that initially, we were worried about timing for contract availability, so we got it out as soon as we could, knowing it was gonna be a longer process. And unfortunately, Mid-American was not done with their final plans. So we bid based off the set we had. They did have to make a few changes as they finalized the plan, so a few of the items are related to that. A couple items are also basically a reimbursement, so we will get funded about $40,000 of the change order. Our utility companies that are out there right now, communications companies, ICN and Central Scott Telephone, that under their franchise, or sorry, not their franchise, the fact that they are in the current right of way, they're required to relocate at their cost for our project. Well, we have a contractor out there that's working, we've got negotiated pricing, so what we agreed to do was let them use our contractor at that pricing and they will direct reimburse us for that work.
That's a
That way,
40 grand.
We're all in the same trench, we know where the facilities are going, we thought it was the most efficient way to handle that. So that was a good chunk of the change order as well.
Okay, and then the 15,000.
Does that answer your question?
Well, kind of. I mean, it looks, I don't know if I'm reading this correctly, that it was originally a $266,000 contract with a change order of $125,000. That's a,
So if you look at the purchase order, Scott, that was actually, we approved it at 325 because we knew that there were gonna be changes coming with the mid-am. So that was ultimately expected because of the fact they were not fully done with that plan. And we're still under our total CIP budget as well.
I don't like change orders.
It caught my attention too. Any other consent items for any council member this evening? All right, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve our consent agenda for consideration tomorrow night.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. We will take up our consent agenda items as well as our regular agenda items tomorrow evening. Any items to be added by council this evening? I have none. All right, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second?
There we go, we got a second. We stand adjourned. Enjoy the rest of your Valentine's